Let's bring our palms together right at our heart and close the eyes. And for a moment, press both of your feet down onto the floor. So in case you're sitting cross-legged or if you're sitting on your couch, press both feet onto the earth. And take a deep inhale from the earth, from your feet, all the way up to the crown of your head. And take a long breath out and let that breath travel from the crown of your head back down towards the tips of your toes. On your next inhale, breathe in deeply to the crown of your head and then pause at the space between your eyebrows. Gaze into the space between the eyebrows and take a big exhale. Once again, breathe into the space between the eyebrows, the mind space, the chittakash. And then exhale. Just notice your mind space. And start to bring your awareness to your throat, to your Vishuddhi chakra, your communication center, this energy vortex of communication here. And on your next inhale, once again, just imagine from the earth all the way up to the crown of your head to the sky. And exhale from the sky back down to earth. You can release your hands and open up your eyes. And welcome to our Astro Yoga chat. I am Kate.
And I'm Natalie. Hi. Also good to have you here again. We will continue with the third house. And Kate, do you have our little chart with the 12 houses of astrology?
Sure. Here we go.
Yes, the third house, it says learning, writing, networking, communication. So of course, for Western astrology, communication is like the main word for the third house. And I listed a few more, which are really interesting. So of course, communication, the mind. Also, what is very interesting in Vedic, it's about your courage, your life force, also about your talents. The third house often has to do with traveling, especially short distance traveling, neighbors, siblings, your neighborhood, your surroundings, lower education, and it has to do with arms, shoulders, and your hands, lungs, because it's connected to Gemini and Mercury. So I was trying to think of something really interesting to connect this to. And what do you think about the 5 Kleshas? I think they're really interesting, Kate, because they are afflictions of the mind. And of course, like always, that's happening in life, but it's also happening in our yoga practice. And we talk about courage, mind, communication. I think that's a very interesting topic we can share with our viewers today.
I agree because so the Kleshas come from both Buddhism and Hinduism. And they're like considered to be these obstacles that the mind, in a sense, kind of creates. It's like the obstacles that we feed, right? So when you're communicating something and you're saying something out loud and over again, you're feeding that energy and making that energy stronger. So with the Kleshas and just even being aware of the Kleshas can help you make decisions on what energy you're looking to feed and what energy that you're looking to eventually kind of starve and just say, okay, I don't need this in my life. Because actually, kleshas, they also get defined as like poison and toxins. So what we're about to discuss, they're not necessarily, these aren't like good things that you really want to grow in your life. They're the stuff that you want to be aware of, and how much are you feeding this kind of energy in your life, because it could be what's, in a sense, like not maybe stopping you, but also shifting your communication with the world on not necessarily in a positive way for you.
Right,
You know?
right.
Yeah.
So the first klesha is really interesting. It's avidya, and it's ignorance, and it's They call it also the mama klesha because it is the seed for all the other four kleshas or obstacles we have. And it says very beautifully here, it's mistaking the permanent for the impermanent. So as for our yoga practice, you know, often when people come to yoga class, the only thing they see about yoga is, you know, the body and the movement. But of course, you know, yoga is a spiritual practice. And if we transfer it to astrology, you know, a lot of people will say, oh, it's just about something in the magazine and it's superstition and, you know, it's just nonsense. But, you know, we talked about it in our very first episode. It also has a spiritual background because it comes actually from the Vedas, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The very first klesha is avidya. It's this sense of like ignorance. It's this sense of the disconnection actually from the soul, right? So you're disconnecting, and soul is a big word. Okay. Soul is a very big word, right? I purposefully use soul as part of my business, soul and steady. I purposely put it in there because the way that I teach is always to bring awareness to the soul. Always. I want to bring people into like their seat of their soul, their Atman, their sense of light and the connection. Because when you connect with yourself, with your soul, as opposed to your physical body is always changing, right? There's this sense of like, you know, there's this sense of like, okay, well, you're going to change. I'm 45. 20 years ago, my body looked different. 20 years from now, my body's going to look different. Does that make my life better or worse?
Right. And
Right?
also identifying with your mind would be the same. You know, the mind is constantly changing. We talked about the gunas. So everything that is permanent, you know, I mean, everything that, you know, decays, you know, is changing. So the only thing that is not changing is the soul or the godly spark within us or source, you know, that's the only thing that is not changing. So when you identify yourself with the body or just with your thoughts, you know, that's actually not all that you are. And therefore, this is the initial problem or root cause of this of the kleshas. Yes.
Yes. And with the mind, I mean, there's misunderstanding, right? All the time. Like as you learn, as you grow, as you evolve, you might recognize something that you believed in so much 5 years ago. And you were like, no, this is it, or this is how I did things. And now you look back at it and think, oh my gosh, thank God I don't do that anymore. Right. So there's this sense of like, you know, not getting so stuck, not getting so like thinking that this is how it is, this is how it should be. And, you know, this is the belief, this is correct kind of world.
Right, right. And when we talk about I am my body or I am my mind, we actually moved already to the second klesha, which is Asmita or egoism. It's everything that I identify myself with. I am Austrian, I am a yoga instructor, I am vegetarian, whatever. And in the end, I mean, it is just a label that you put onto yourself, but your soul is also so much more, right?
Absolutely. And when we put these labels upon ourselves, we're also labeling other people, right? So then the ego then also labels other people and they say, well, she's that and he's that and I'm not, and this is who I am, or, and it divides us. So it doesn't, so souls are like, we're all meant to be like, we're all the same. Like if in a spiritual practice, we should be able to walk down the street and see the connection with every single soul that you pass, even if you don't know that person, even if they're another color, another race, another gender, another culture, nationality, whatever it is, they are a soul, you know. And you know, then sometimes people will say, well, how come some people are really good and some people are really bad? Well, it's also like the disconnection from your own self with your soul. So this is part of it too, you know. It's like disconnecting yourself from understanding your true light, and this is where yoga is trying to get you back to the place of being like, this is really who you are, you
Yes,
know.
and when we connect that to astrology, actually, you know, when you look into a chart, the soul is, I mean, it's the sun. Sometimes they also say it is the moon because it's your emotions, but you know, the moon is rather the emotions, but the soul actually itself is the sun. So in a chart, you actually see your soul's plan, Like, what did you plan to come here? How would you like to be? Where do you start out? Where should you end? What are your lessons? And also when you meet people, like you see soul contracts, like what are your issues? Can you learn from that person? What is going to be really easy for the two of you, where it's going to flow easily, so you see that soul there is so much more in there, actually, also in the chart.
Wow, it's so amazing. So
Yes.
amazing.
And then,
Go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
sorry. And the next three are so interesting. The next, Raja and Dvesha, it's liking something and not liking something. And I experience that a lot, in yoga class. Like when I take class, we often get triggered, like, I like this pose. Oh, it's my favorite pose. Or I don't like this pose. Or I like this teacher. I like this music. I don't like this teacher. I don't like the room. I don't like this mat, So my teachers back then always said, like, listen to what's going on in your head.
Yeah.
And maybe that's also connected with the pose, what is being triggered within you. So as long as you're aware of what's going on, so you're like the observer behind your thoughts, right? That's okay. But if you're inside your head and you're stuck in the tape and you identify yourself with your thoughts, then it's a little problem.
Absolutely. Because I also think too with that, I like this, I don't like that, this is good, this is bad. This is where we also start to build up our clinging and our cravings and our sense of like, well, I really like this, and this is what's making me very happy in my life. So I need more of this, this, and this. But those are also the things that are outside of your control. So when you cling and when you crave the things that are outside of your control, for example, like let's say if you start, you're like dating someone new and you're just really into them and you want to be next to them all the time. What happens in the mind? You become crazy. You become like this craving, clingy, crazy person. And all your friends are telling you, calm down. And you're like, I can't.
That new partner is probably not gonna like it. I mean, no people that are obsessive.
No,
So
that's attachment, right? So we become attached. Are you really attached to that person, or are you attached to that energy that it's bringing? Are you attached to that feeling? It's like sometimes when people eat too much, when they eat too many sweets, when they have too much of whatever, is it really the cookie that you like in love with, or is it that like that rush of energy that gives you, and then all of a sudden you're like, I need more of that, I'm attached to that now. And those attachments are that's not necessarily a good thing. You don't want to be attached to things. You want to be free.
And that actually reminds me of one of the talks we already had about benefics and the malefics. So the benefics, Venus and Jupiter, they're all about what do you like and what makes you feel good, and it's expansive and it's bringing in new experiences. Well, yes, that's really nice, but that's often not what leads you into a disciplined and good direction and building things. Like the malefics, they're really rough with you. But if you go on a path and you work hard, that's probably gonna take you further than just like my Venus likes to be at home in Cancer. I mean, you cannot build a career like this, so you need the malefics to get going and, go out in the world and, build a career, whatever, so just staying with things that you like are not so good. And I always say in yoga class too, the pose that you don't like so much, your body is probably craving, because I mean the other pose you can do really well and it's just nice to do it, but the pose that you can't do, your body is like missing certain qualities or a knowledge of how to do it, and actually you should train that pose even more.
Yes. So that's I think a lesson for all of us. The things that you are like, no, I don't want to, I don't know, I don't like that. No, I don't want to do that. Just soften your no. Like soften your no and just explore it a little bit more and just see how, maybe that pose that you don't like to do, perhaps it's the back bending, perhaps it's you know, the inversions even, right? So coming upside down, like, you know, which we'll get into it as we go down the kleshas, right? But like going upside down, no, 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 I'm too afraid, I can't do it, you know? Let me tell you. Anyway, let's keep going because I think the inversions are good for like as we continue down the kleshas, you know?
Yes. Yes, they actually are, because we can connect the inversions to the part of the third house that is courage,
Mhm.
and also to the fifth klesha, Abhinivesha, which is fear of death. So why do you connect inversions and fear of death? You know, honestly, when I did my teacher training, I did not do inversions at that point. And I had to start doing them in order to be able to teach them. And honestly, when I did my first headstand, I was like, I'm gonna die. I think, you know, if I put my entire body weight on my head, it's just gonna come off.
Mhm.
And then you realize, oh no. And then you practice it and you're still fearful for a while. And at some point you feel like, oh, I'm getting so much stronger. And then it's a lot of fun, you know? It's
Mhm.
really fun being upside down, but it takes courage to stay on that path and keep working on it. And in the beginning, I mean, standing on your hands, standing on your forearms, standing on your head. It's extremely
Mhm.
scary, but you should always know how to do it. I mean, that's important.
Of course, don't just do it. Yeah, I mean, I remember practicing headstand. I practiced against the wall for 6 months before I actually had the courage to step away from the wall. And that was a very, very close like time for me because as much as I was afraid to do it, I also had to like get out of my, you know, sense of maybe it was a little bit of like ego-ness too, of saying, okay, well, I'm going to go use the wall and I'm okay with going to go use the wall. It's okay for me to have that support, right? Your yoga practice is also going to show you what your like your aversions are too. Like we're talking about these like kleshas, like maybe in the bigger picture, it's like, okay, I don't want to ask for help, right? I don't want to, I can do it all by myself. So at first that wall was very for me like, I got to do it against the wall. I got to like, I need help. And then I started to like soften. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I do need help. I need help. Can you help me, wall? Like, can you help me come upside down? And then I remember when I first stepped away from the wall and did my headstand. And then it never left me, you know, because it's like riding a bicycle. Once you get it, you get it. Um, but yeah, like that fear of death also holds people back because it keeps them in their box, you know. It keeps people from not just like exploring in your life but also accepting life.
And
I
it's,
read this.
of course,
Yeah,
not just fear of death, it's actually fear of failure,
failure.
or not being good enough, or
Yeah.
making a mistake. I mean, it's just, you know, the most extreme word, fear of death, but there's so much more connected to that.
Yeah. A lot of people are afraid to start something new because they're afraid they're going to fail, or they're afraid of being that beginner. And in reality, it's like, you know, again, how do you soften into that energy and say you know, it's okay. It's obviously it's okay, but like really, this is part of the learning process of life. This is
Yeah.
actually the fun part about life if you let it happen in that way, where you get to be a kid learning over it. No one would ever look at a child and say, oh, you're learning something new. How come you haven't gotten that yet? Like, how come you haven't figured that out? Babies start to walk and everyone is like, oh, like one little step and then they fall and everyone's like, yay, you know. Like as an adult, you grow up and it's like, okay, like I took one step and fell down. Up, I suck. I'm a failure. I suck. It's like, no, you're doing something brand spanking new.
You know,
Yeah.
that reminds me so much of meditation. Oh, I tried it once, it didn't work for me. I was like, what? Or I took one yoga class, you know, I'm just not flexible. Well, yes, of course, because you'll get flexible doing it, or, you know.
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yes.
So
But
that's, go ahead.
I think a lot of what the glaciers are about labeling,
Yeah.
labeling what you are, what you can do, your beliefs about, I'm too old, I cannot do this, I'm not flexible, whatever. I'm, too afraid. I like this, I don't like this. So labeling is really an interesting word. So maybe as a homework for the next week, just observe your mind, and maybe you'll find ignorance, like not knowing who you are, egoism, like, I am this, I am that, labeling things, what you like, what you don't like, and where are you really afraid.
Mm-hmm. And then also like what you're what you like and what you don't like, but also like what are you attached to? So like that whole craving idea of what are you attaching yourself to? What is it, something in your life that like, and don't forget, it could be something positive, it could be something that's actually positive, but because you're attached to it, you're turning into a negative, right? Because there's that balance in life. So even something that's like really, really good, it can be really, really bad depending on the balance of things. So yeah. And I will put this in the notes section. So that way, as you're going to do your homework, you could also see it in the notes. So that way you can keep track of that. Yeah.
Right, that sounds
Cool.
wonderful.
Oh.
Good.
Well, that was our chat on the third house of communication and also of the kleshas. So let's bring our palms together at our hearts. Close your eyes softly. Take a deep inhale through your nose. And take a long exhale out. Bring your awareness into the center of your eyebrows. Then bring your awareness into your throat. And now let's bring our awareness into our heart space. Once again, take a deep inhale and a long exhale. You can release your hands and open up your eyes, and we will see you next week. Thank you, everyone.
Namaste.